Hello, this is PJ Capozzi, Superintendent of Schools, giving the FY25 budget presentation for Meridian 223. There are multiple ways you can try to figure out the financial health of a district. The way that we find to be most comprehensive is looking at our operating reserves. Operating funds for us consist of things that we typically spend out of on a biweekly basis to make payroll. So basically, if everything shut down, if the world shut down, we're in a massive recession. When we look at operating reserves, we know how long we could operate given no other influx of money. And so where you see we're at is we've been pretty consistent over the last 4 years, which has been intentional. We don't want to be taxing at a rate where we have this large surplus. We kind of want to tax and spend right around the same amount so that we're living within our means. Where we are at right now is roughly 200 days of cash on hand in our operating reserves. Within the operating reserves, it is primarily made up of Fund 10. Fund 10, Fund 20, Fund 40, and Fund 70 are your operating funds, but 10 is 5 times as large as any other fund. What you can see here is that our Fund 10 is, again, healthy. We project at the end of this year to have a fund balance, which will bolster our total fund balance to roughly $10,400,000. This, again, is roughly 200 plus days of cash on hand. Overall totals and key numbers. So I want you to look at the very end, and these are unaudited numbers, so they're very close, but they're not quite precise. At the end of last year, we had about 14.9 as our fund balance. So that's kind of what's remaining, for lack of a better term, in the bank when the fiscal year ended. And just as a reminder, if it's school year 23-24, that's fiscal year 24. So this year we're in school year 24-25. That is fiscal year 25. So this year you can see that our operating fund balance at the end is 13.2. Our overall fund balance increases, which means that we are going to be operating this year in a balanced or slightly surplused area. One other area which we pay at the board and administrative level particular attention to is our operating reserve. When we first took over, we were in the low 20s. Any lower amount of operating reserve, we would have had to have considered taking out tax anticipation warrants just to make payroll. And so this is a very sound indicator of financial health. Our goal for a long time has been to remain over 50%. And you can see we are clearly there. So you might be asking yourself, this is the budget. How do we get money? The number one way we get money is through tax payments that are driven by the levy. So our tax rate times our EAV equates to the money that comes into the district that we can spend. The second largest way we get funding is through evidence-based funding, which is from the state. The third is through grant funding and categoricals. The vast majority of grants we receive are reimbursable grants. That's what categoricals are as well. So as we spend money, show our receipts that we have proof of expenditure, then we receive the money as reimbursements. This makes perfect sense and it works well. Sometimes this gets really messy between fiscal years. So there are times where you will spend money in one fiscal year and receive reimbursement in the next. And so one year you might look like you were a heavy deficit. One year you might look like a surplus. It's just part of how the state works in terms of grant funding, categorical funding, and reimbursements. And then, of course, fees and payments make up a very small percentage of our overall revenue. I'd like to show you this slide because it demonstrates what we've tried to do with our tax rate over time. You can see that in tax year 15 was shortly after the referendum was passed. We're up about 6.1 in terms of tax rate, and now we're about 5.7. So we've gone down a significant amount of money. If we would have kept the tax rate where it was at in tax year 15, the district would recoup over $1 million extra per year that we have essentially chosen not to over time in effort to not put an increased burden on our taxpayers. The expenditures are more scientific. We work really hard to ensure that our budget reflects our priorities. So you can see a couple of the areas we've added expenditures over the last few years have been in terms of instructional coaching. What research and education says that one of the best things we can do is provide job-embedded professional development for our staff, so that's what we've done. We've also focused on keeping our class sizes particularly low at K-5, again, supported by research. We have also increased our special education supports significantly in the last 5 to 7 years to ensure that all of our students are getting their needs met. There are some very finite numbers we can use when budgeting, such as salaries. Most people know exactly what they're going to make when the school year starts as a result of being on salary. Those are pretty easy, and we have some controlled expenditures, but we have some soft numbers too. Like everyone else, we're not exactly sure what we're going to pay in our electric and gas bills. We're not exactly sure what we're going to pay in our water bills or our garbage bills. In addition, major projects, sometimes they can come in under budget, sometimes they come in over budget. So as we budget for those, it's not exactly precise. And then we always have contingencies. What happens if something significantly goes wrong? What happens if we have students with particular needs we can't serve and have to spend some money? So there's always contingencies built in the expenditures as well, which is why in this $25 million or so budget, each year we're off a little bit in one way or the other, trying to make the school operate as effectively as possible. So that is our FY25 annual budget report. I will be asking the board to approve this at the September board meeting. If you have any questions between now and then, please reach out and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you and make it a great day.